is something truly that I've struggled with for years. Even in art school, they would say, okay, find your style, stick to that. And I had classmates that would paint in that one style for years. And it was
Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show where we take a peek into the hearts and lives of our favorite artists. From running a creative business and practice to mindset, we talk about everything that goes behind into making a life and a career that you adore as an artist. Think of this as your happy hour with your favorite artist in your studio. Hear them share the messy and the wonderful side of creating and living a creative, heartfelt life within and outside our studios. As you tune in, be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Before we dig into this episode, I quickly wanted to share with you about our first ever interview open call. Yes, every month we will be releasing a special themed podcast issue from our selected artists from our podcast interviews call for artists. The current theme of this open call is Garden of Nostalgia. You can simply visit www.arts2heartsproject.com and find all the details on how to apply. The open call ends on April 6, 2021, so apply soon. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast, and I'm your host, Charka Arora. Okay, today I have a very special guest and a very dear friend that I feel like I've known forever. But this is for the first time, actually, we're talking here in person on video. So, let me introduce you to Victoria. Victoria is an artist, art educator, and founder of Visionary Art Collective. I've seen her done tremendously beautiful work in the past 1 year, not only in her art practice but also how wonderfully she's created Visionary in the past 1 year, and how much she's supported so many new creatives and artists, and that there's so many new exciting things that she's been doing, and I have a ton of questions for her and I can't wait to dig in. But before that, welcome to the podcast, Victoria.
Hi, Chiruka. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so excited to be here, and I've been following your journey, so it is a true pleasure and honor to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm really grateful. Thank you for agreeing. I know it was a short notice, but I'm so glad we made this possible.
Me too. This worked out perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, so before we begin, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners so that they get to know a little bit more about you?
Sure. So, my name is Victoria. I'm currently based in Connecticut, but will be moving into New York soon. I'm an artist, I'm a full time art educator, I teach high school students, and I'm also the founder of Visionary Art Collective, which is a platform that connects contemporary art with education. So we have a few different branches, which I'll talk more about in a bit, but our overall mission is to highlight the work of artists and art educators across the world.
Awesome. Love that. Okay. We really have to dig in into a lot about what you've been doing for the past 1 year. But before we go into any of that, I wanted to go back in time and I wanted to know who you were as a child. How was it? Where did you grow up and were you like a creative child?
Sure. Yeah, I loved being alone as a child, and so I was literally always painting and drawing. I was born in England and I lived there until I was almost 6 years old. And we lived way out in the English countryside. So it was, beautiful fields and hills and just the most stunning landscape, which I think really inspired me and continues to inspire me to this day. And then when I was 6, we moved to Singapore and we lived there for 2 years, which was incredible. Like, it was such a
Wow.
cool experience and so beautiful and warm and just lovely. And then we moved to New York when I was 8 years old. So my family still lives mostly in New York, and they have a really beautiful house that's really like sort of in the forest. It's just it's beautiful. So I think all of these different landscapes has
Wow.
inspired so much of what I do today. Yeah.
Awesome. So, how was it for you growing up, especially like in such a different, like moving around the world and being exposed to different cultures and geographies and, all of these things? And how were you? Were you making art at that point even?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been making art. It's so embedded into the core of who I am, and like I said, when I was a child, I was literally always drawing and painting and um like all the time. It's funny because I look back at old photos like through our family photo albums, and there's photos of me painting and there's photos of me just like alone in a room drawing, but that's how I spent my time. And in terms of the different cultures I experienced, I mean, I think it embedded in me a really deep respect for other cultures at such a young age, especially when I was in Singapore, because I had friends
Yeah.
of so many different ethnicities. Like, I had friends that were Japanese, Chinese. I had friends who were, different religions. I had a lot of Muslim friends. Like, it was such a melting pot of different cultures. And I
Wow.
loved learning about, like, I remember my friends who were Chinese would start teaching me different characters and how to say different words. And I just found it so
Mm.
fascinating, even at such a as such a young child. And I think it also ingrained in me like a curiosity about other people, their lives, their traditions. Like, I just love learning about those things because there's so many different like realities for different people. Everyone's living their life in a different reality, and I think to learn and to kind of open your mind and get a different perspective is really interesting and also really important. So, yeah.
Yeah. Love that. That's really wonderful. And when you actually moved here, and how was that when you finally started staying in the US? How did you always knew you wanted to be an artist? Did you pursue education in the arts? And how was that for you?
Sure. I think when we moved to the United States, I was in, third grade, so I was in elementary school, and I remember it wasn't actually the easiest transition for me. It's funny because moving to Singapore was an easier transition for me than moving to the United States, even though you would think that the US and England would be more similar. But it was actually a bigger culture shock to me in a lot of ways. Um, it was not the easiest thing, to be completely honest. I remember for a lot of the time that we
Hmm.
lived here, I
Hmm.
really wanted to be back in England. I really missed Singapore, and it took me a little while to adjust. But I think one thing that really helped with that adjustment was just the beautiful landscape around the house I grew up in. I would like go wander into the woods for literally I would just go like hang out in the forest alone for hours as a child, and that became like really therapeutic for me. So I grew to really love the landscape, and then I grew to sort of um, understand the people here more and make friends and that sort of thing. And so I was always doing art, like even when we moved to New York, I was always doing art in school, taking as many art classes as I could. The high school that I went to when I was a teenager had a ton of different art classes. So I would take like as many as I could possibly fit in my schedule. And then I knew probably around age 15 that I wanted to go into art and study it and do something in art. I never doubted that I would be an artist. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. Was I going to be a
Yeah.
graphic designer? Was I going to be a painter?
Hmm.
I wasn't sure. But
Hmm.
I was quite sure that I was going to be, a painter, just because that is what I focused in. And so I went to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and I studied fine art there, which was amazing. But um, I think, and I mean, this is sort of a separate conversation. I don't want to digress too much, but I think the
Hmm.
one difficult thing about going to art school here is that it didn't really prepare me for life
The
after.
real world.
I graduated college.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like the real world, exactly. You graduate college and you're like, okay, now what? There wasn't a lot of like
Yeah.
practical classes on how you can actually make a career
Mm.
out of your art. So then that's actually what led me into teaching because I knew that I loved teaching and working with kids. So I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I think this is something I could do and actually enjoy. And then I decided to get my master's in teaching and that sort of thing. So I know
Wow.
that's a very long
Wow.
answer to your question.
No, we love any kind of answers. We're here to listen you. So, okay,
Oh,
I have one more question. Um, while you were, figuring all of this out, um, what I wanted to know was how was it for you while you were in the grad school? And it seems like it's like a dream for a lot of people. What you've just talked about, like being in New York,
yeah,
being an artist,
yeah,
studying in an art school, and being a part of the whole the art, the mainstream art circle, and being there. And while you've been
yeah.
living all of that, how exactly did you feel? Especially, I think now, since it's been forever for you to be in the US, but at some point you did come as an outsider, but being as an insider, as an
Mhm.
outsider, both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as an outsider, growing up, the one thing that I struggled with was never feeling like I fit in with my American friends here.
Hmm.
I had a really strong English accent for a long time. You probably can't hear it at all anymore, but I had it for years after I moved here. Like I would say up until almost my teenage years. That's like when I kind of lost it. And so I think the struggle when I mean, maybe, I can only speak for myself, but for me,
Yeah.
moving from another country, you just always feel like an outsider. And my family is very British, like very patriotic in terms of celebrating, British culture. If you go to our house,
Yeah.
there's British flags everywhere. It's like very, very British at my house. And
Good.
so I always remember, like, as a kid, though, I wasn't always proud of those traditions because I just wanted to fit in with
Yeah.
all my friends that were like, that were
Yeah.
American. And that was a challenge. But over time, and that does take a long time to shake those feelings of
Yeah.
feeling like an
Absolutely.
outsider. Sometimes even at age 30, I wonder if I still feel that way
Absolutely.
at times, because those things get embedded
100%.
into. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
working
true.
through that, but yeah, but I think once I got to college, though, I think one thing that really helped was feeling like I was with all these like-minded people, everyone was there to study art, and being in that kind of community, especially in New York City, big art
Yeah.
scene, like you're always going to museums, you're always going to gallery
Yeah.
openings. Like I would go to gallery openings every single week. And I
Oh my
worked in one of the
God.
galleries. Oh yeah,
Okay.
you would see famous artists there. You would see like artists you learned
Wow.
about in high school at the gallery. It was so crazy. But this was back in like 2009, 2010. Um, but one thing that I started doing in college that I thought I was going to continue was working in the galleries. I thought that was going to be my career path, but it's actually something you said before this call that really
Yeah.
resonated with me when you talked about design and fashion and how
Yeah.
you felt like that wasn't coming from it was about producing
Yeah.
and manufacturing. That's how it felt for me working at the art galleries. It wasn't
Hmm.
about the art, it was about
Yeah.
the money and the business. And so that's something that I decided just wasn't the best fit for me. But certainly living in New York during those years was like a dream. It was really magical in a lot of ways.
But then what made you move? Did you like what happened then?
Yeah. So I lived in New York for 4 years. And then the fifth year, I was sort of half there, half not there because I was trying to figure out if I wanted to stay there. So I was sort of like back and forth. I wasn't really there consistently. I just felt like I needed a change because, like I was saying, the school that I went to, very good art school, very expensive art school. Um, they just they didn't really teach me what to do after. And so the year that I graduated, I really didn't know. This was before I decided I wanted to teach. I didn't know what to do. So it was actually I was in a very dark place for that whole year.
Hmm.
And like I said, I was sort of staying with my parents and then going into back into the city because my parents live just outside, about an hour and a half north of the city. And I was just going back and forth trying to figure it out. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go and get my master's degree. So I moved up to Maine for a year, which was very isolating and cold after coming from New York City. Maine is like a fisherman's village.
Oh my
Everyone's just
god.
fishing, and it's like it's really quiet. And um but I got my degree there, and at that point I was like feeling super isolated because I wasn't in New York City anymore. I was in this little like
Yeah.
you know I was up in Maine. I was actually in Portland, which is like the big city, but it's not a big city coming from New York City. It's like a town.
Yeah,
It's like a
nothing is
small
big as
town.
that. Yeah.
So I didn't know anyone there. I just knew my classmates that I went to grad school with. So I decided to move out to California. I actually moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
And yeah, so I was living across the bay from San Francisco and teaching in San Francisco for 2 years. And then I really wanted to move to Los Angeles because,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
LA, so beautiful. So I moved to LA and was just like, why the heck not? And I lived there for 3 years. And I just moved back from LA to the East Coast, um, like a year and a half
Oh
ago.
wow.
So I was actually in California for 5 years total.
Wow.
And now I'm back here. But I'm actually, my partner and I are going to move to Brooklyn this summer. We've decided.
Awesome. Wow, back to where you
Yeah, so
started.
lots of moving. Yeah, back to where I started. I miss the
Yeah.
city, I miss seeing the art. So I think it'll be fun to be back. And to be
Yeah.
back 10 years later, it's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Coming from a very different place, and um, I think knowing ourselves better and not giving in the pressure of what people expect or what a culture is, but just being yourself. I think it does make a lot of
Yeah.
difference.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, and it takes time to get to that point.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your work. So, what is
Sure.
now that you're telling me, I'm able to stitch a lot of things together of why you're making what you're making, because I think that's always such I'm always so interested in, because I truly believe that our
Yeah.
personal experiences, our life experiences actually shape what we're doing, and it really impacts our work. And now that you're talking about um, traveling and seeing so much and constantly moving, it does make it does bring out that connection of landscapes, I would say, like geography in a
Yeah.
sense, is space in a sense.
Yeah.
I really want to know how what what was the kind of work that you were making before, and what is the kind of work that can you talk about you're making right now, and how does it affect
Yeah.
your, like, does it have any connection with you making, like, your experience of traveling and moving from the UK to the US and then traveling all over?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question. So, when I was in art school, I was just experimenting, and I felt like I didn't really find my voice until my last year of art school, which is when I stumbled upon painting with beeswax. also known as encaustic, but I don't
And
often refer to my work as encaustic because I don't use the traditional encaustic techniques and processes. But I found beeswax, and it was the first thing I had tried as an artist that just clicked. You know, probably how you feel with collage,
yeah.
right? Like it just,
Oh,
you
100%.
start doing it and yeah, it just feels
It
right. You
just
have
fell
that gut
into,
feeling of like, yeah, it's
yeah,
just that connection. So I started working with the wax and I was just absolutely fascinated by it. And I started using wood. So I was using like these natural materials, and I wasn't even fully like cognizant of that. I realized, I think a friend pointed
mm,
out to me like, "Oh, you're using all natural materials." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right."
yeah,
But it wasn't planned. I just was thinking, "Oh, well, the wax can't really be applied to a canvas, so I should start putting it on
yeah,
wood." And then as I started to use the beeswax and I would melt it and dye it and pour it onto the wood, I would notice that a lot of the textures of the wax started to look like organic forms and kind of echo a lot of the things that you see when you're in the natural landscape. And so I started to work bigger, and soon I was working on these like 4 by 6 foot
yeah,
panels of wood and creating these like sort of giant abstract, you know, textured landscapes. And it just awakened something inside of me. And so I've been doing, I mean, that was 10 years ago. I've been working with beeswax on and off now for a decade. But I've realized that sometimes, you know, you need breaks. If I do the same thing all the time,
absolutely.
I lose interest. Yeah, I need a
Yeah,
break. So
100%.
yeah, I think it's important to creatively and mentally just mix it up, because you know, I know that there are some artists that just do abstract work or that just paint portraits, and but for me, I've realized that for me to feel balanced creatively, I need to be trying different things. That keeps me engaged,
Yeah,
it keeps me learning. And so last year when COVID hit, I basically took to my studio and
yeah,
was working on my beeswax paintings for 4 or 5 months straight. I was in the studio almost every
yeah.
day, uh, and just I really like
I
put
remember
myself
your
through it.
launch.
What's that?
I remember your launch. You launched these beautiful beeswax huge paintings.
Oh yes. Yeah, they were just, oh my gosh, it was so amazing to make them, and I still have a lot of them. But once September came around, I needed a change. I wanted to practice painting people. That was something I loved as a teenager, was drawing and painting portraits. And I realized, oh my gosh, I haven't done that since I was a teenager.
Yeah,
That's something I loved so much. What's stopping me? And I think maybe it was fear that I couldn't do it anymore,
yeah,
you know, fear that I had forgotten how to do it. And turns out when you
yeah.
do take a break for 10 years, you are actually pretty rusty when you try to go back to it. I'm like very rusty. But you have to go with what your heart wants. And I did have a bit of anxiety in
100%.
terms of like, yeah, like what will this mean for my Instagram if now I all of a sudden I'm
Yeah, oh
posting
my God.
portraits, and you know, it's so
This is
different. But I
exactly
have to say,
something.
yes,
Like,
yes,
this
go
is
ahead.
exactly something which is we've also spoken earlier in the conversation, and that I think I would really want you to talk a little bit more about this, because this is something that all of us go through. Because with the pressure, of course, there have been certain, like, a lot of advantages of being on social media, but there are also a lot of cons that
Yeah,
we really need to put out. The constant need of,
yeah,
being one directional, and also realizing that at the core of who we are creatives. And I mean, so many times I feel myself like I've also been in the same space right now, because I've been doing collages, and I just needed some time to step away, and I'm still questioning myself, and, like, what if what does that mean for me? Or, like, or even being multi passionate, that is something that I think you and me both will advocate on many levels. the whole thought
Yeah.
process of this whole fitting in a box, fitting in a linear
Yeah.
definition. Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about
One
this.
thing, this is something truly that I've struggled with for years. Even in art school, they would say, okay, find your style, stick to that. And I had classmates that would paint in that one style for years. And it was amazing work that they were doing, but I just wanted to try new things all the
New
time. And
things.
that doesn't mean that I can't stick with like my beeswax work. Well, I will always do that. Every year I'll probably take,
Yeah.
3 or 4 months to work on that, but I can't do that all year round every year. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I really get bored, like for
Yeah.
me, I think to feel like you are, and it is different for everyone, but truly, I think to
Yeah.
feel like you are reaching your potential as an artist, you have to feel like you're trying new things and pushing yourself and
Yeah.
stretching yourself and doing that with different materials and doing that with different subject matter. And I think Instagram, especially how there's this pressure to keep a perfectly curated Instagram feed with
Hmm.
every post is basically a different,
Yeah.
slightly different version of the post before, you know.
Yeah.
And and for me, I actually tried that. So everything on my Instagram was like a beeswax painting or a close up of a beeswax painting.
Yeah.
But then when I started creating portraits or watercolors or whatever,
Yeah.
and I felt like I couldn't share them, And then I'm like, why do I
Oh
feel like I
yeah.
can't share them on my Instagram? Like that's so silly. What if maybe I want
Yeah.
to share this portrait with friends, Why can't I do that? And so I decided, I really at this point I just said, whatever, I'm going to post whatever I want, a portrait, a landscape. It doesn't all have to match. It can be different. I can
Yeah.
always delete them later if I want to, or maybe I'll keep them. But I think what you have to do is let go of being tied to an outcome. Like I had to let go of
Yeah.
um the outcome that I was tied to was growing a following through
Right.
Instagram, and I had to let go of that in order to give
Absolutely.
myself permission.
You know, 100%. I mean, I've felt the same way. And I would say even quite recently, the kind of work I was making 1.5 years ago, I was doing these really colorful um, uh, gouache paintings, and then I suddenly I just found my way into the kind of work that I'm making now. But I do feel that I'm also evolving from where I am today. But sometimes, when I want to share my previous work, I feel a little uncomfortable because I feel like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's going to put like, it's not going to come together. But what I also, and I keep, what really helps me, I ask myself, what if there was no Instagram, and if I had to just put this
Yeah.
in my studio, would I question myself? And most of the time the
Yeah.
answer is no. And I like, if I'm confident to keep
Yeah.
it in my studio, if I had to show it, why am I so concerned about the
Yes.
Instagram?
Yes. I think that's something that so many people can relate to. And I mean, when it comes to my Instagram with Visionary Art Collective, I think with that, because it's a business,
Yeah.
it's a business account, I'm a little bit more careful with how it's curated, and I
Yeah.
want everything to be a certain way. But when it's my personal art, art is messy and free and creative. That's a page that I don't
Absolutely.
want to perfectly. That's where I just want to be myself. And I'm like, you know what? Another thing I had to let go of was like caring if I get, 15
I
likes
mean,
or
yeah.
80 likes or 100 likes. I had to let go of it and say like it doesn't matter. It's just I'm putting this out there to share with the world, and it doesn't matter. Like the people who love my work and find value in it will be there, and the people who don't have to follow my journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. And that's something that really, um, we're really grateful for so many beautiful relationships that Instagram has given. And I think, I'm so grateful I met you and, so many other people. But it also has put us in a space where sometimes it's
Yeah.
so difficult to understand how to manage your real life versus what you're online, and this constant pressure to keep up that pace. I've been off Instagram for a few weeks right now. I was really busy with
Yeah.
work, and then I was like, I just needed a breather. But as guilty
Yeah.
I would feel to say this, I did feel like, if I'm not posting, am I getting
Yeah.
irrelevant? It sounds weird to say, but
Yeah.
I'll be 100% honest.
No, it's so true. I feel that all the time because sometimes, like with Visionary Art Collective, I post all the
Yeah.
time, but with my own art, I'm at the point where I'll go like 2 weeks or sometimes 3 weeks without posting anything. But you know, I for me, it's like I have to understand like there will be seasons where I can post a lot because I'm making a lot and I'm
Yeah.
feeling good about it and I want to share it. But there's also going to be seasons where I'm busy, like I have, teaching or like you were just saying, you had something else you were working on, and it's okay for it to take a back seat. It's a lot of
Yeah.
letting go, and that can be
Yeah.
really hard sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's really nice and important. Okay. Um, while you were while when you came out of college and you were moving, what was like, I think we also spoke about this before we began recording, that here in India there have been really little opportunities when it comes to showing your work, and whatever there have
Mhm.
been, they're very mainstream. uh, you know, I mean, I wouldn't say it fits all. And how
Mhm.
did you find your way when it came about moving forward in the real life after coming out of college, finding opportunities,
Mhm.
paving your path? What were your biggest struggles when it came to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest struggle for me after art school was trying to balance an art making practice while also having to work full time for the first time.
Yeah,
Like in art school, I didn't I had a job here and there, but I didn't really work a ton because I wanted to focus on my art. And so I was
yeah,
almost in this little like unrealistic bubble. It wasn't really
bubble.
reality. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just like, "Oh, I get to clean all day," and then as soon as I graduated, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get a full-time job. If I have a full-time job,
um,
how can I also continue
how will
my art practice?"
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
truthfully, I took a break from painting for probably 3 years. I barely painted at all,
Okay.
and I only started painting again in I mean, I would still do my beeswax work here and there, but very, very
Here and there.
rarely. And then, yeah, it was like once in a while. And then in 2016, I started just doing watercolors and I slowly got back into painting and then I started doing my beeswax a bit more. But when you're teaching full time, it is challenging. And I have so much respect to my
Mm,
fellow art teachers out there who are also
yeah.
professional artists because it's really hard to balance it all. So I would have to say the biggest struggle in terms of making art and also taking the time to submit to opportunities is time, you
Yeah.
know?
It's like kind of
But
a full time job in its own.
yeah, it is. And I'm really learning that even if you can just, the past year, I've gotten a lot better about applying to opportunities. I applied to a lot of opportunities last year and I got into, a bunch of online exhibits and I had some interviews and things were really flowing. But then in December, I felt like I needed to take a few months off of applying and submitting. And now I just started again. But you have to, I think, be in tune with what you're feeling. And I think
Oh,
that's actually like
100%.
coming up a lot in this conversation. You have to be in tune
Yeah.
with, um, yeah, am I feeling like I need
I
a break from
100%
this
feel what you're
thing?
saying.
Yeah, yeah, you
I
have to really
100%
listen
feel
to
what you're
yourself.
saying, because Yeah, I do. I
Yes.
think I can relate 100% to this because I myself have had quite a similar trajectory because in 2019, I think in the beginning of 2019 to 2020, I was quite focused, and I was getting a lot of like, I think I was getting my groove together and I was evolving and everything. And then um, little late of 2020, and when the whole arts to hearts thing started, I wanted to do this project. I realized that I wanted to take some time off. I only could do so much. I had so many, like, I have so many other things that are already on my plate. And when I wanted to add one more, I needed to understand that I would have to put a few things here and there. And ever since that, I've not been applying anywhere. And before that, I was applying here and there. I did a few online exhibits and all of that. And now I know that I need to take some time. Now I want to focus on creating. And then, I mean, there's a season to
Mm.
create, there's a season to apply, there's a season
Yeah.
to maybe even rest.
Yes. 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 Sometimes it's hard to do everything at once, like you can burn out that way and you
Yeah.
just have to listen. Like, are you having a month where you want to put your art out into the world more, then do that. Are you feeling, especially in the winter for me, I don't really, the winter for me is like more focused time to sketch and paint and focus on my
Yeah.
practice. And I just don't have a ton of motivation in the winters to be submitting and putting myself out there, because that's
Yeah.
the time where we're all like in rest. But
In
you
Yeah.
have to tune in. And I think something else that
Yeah.
I want to mention that is really, really important is to practice forgiveness. And that's something I'm working on right now. Like, if you're having a season
Hmm.
where you want to take a break from the normal art that you do, and you want to try something else, don't
Yeah.
feel bad not doing, the work that is you feel like is expected of you. Or if you want to take a few
Yeah.
months off to not apply or submit to different shows, that's
Yeah.
okay too. I think there's way too
100%.
much pressure sometimes
Oh,
on
100%.
being an artist. Yeah, you
Yeah,
need to let some of that pressure go.
yeah, really, that's true. And I really want to add something to this. I don't think I have mentioned this on any episode yet. When I decided I wanted to be an artist, I already had a running successful design career where, I was into branding and designing and all of that. And I was somehow framed in this place where I felt like to be an artist, I had to stop doing anything else and just, this picture of being in the studio all the time. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I did do that. I put a lot of my projects on the back seat because I wasn't even sure about, I was still navigating myself. And when I did that, I mean, let's say 2 years, 2.5 years now down the line, I realized that I am not someone who, I love art, but I need to know that it's coming from a real place, and it's something I do out of sheer
Yeah.
joy and not out of pressure. And I'm not someone who wants to be
Yeah.
constantly in a corner and just, I mean, for me, creation is just more than the studio. I've been creating for
Yeah.
like past 10 years on so many different levels. And I don't want to put my box only in one definition. But I'd
Yes.
done that because that was what people expected out of me or what artist was, and because I wanted to fit into that definition. Today, this podcast is, again, I think we spoke about this
Yes.
even before the call, this recording, that this
Yeah.
podcast is a part of my art practice. Working for my
Yeah.
organizations, consulting people um, on how to share the story or branding, or like,
Yeah.
thinking things on a bigger level. And some days are when I just want to be in the studio and I just don't want to see
Yeah.
anyone. I would just switch off my phone. I don't even want to carry my
Yes.
laptop. And that's okay.
Yes, and you just wanna create. Yeah. No, I think that's such a good point, and that is what we were talking about before this call was there's so many different kinds of art. It's not all separate. When you are a creator and a creative person and you just genuinely love creating things, that can be in the form of creating a podcast or creating an art platform. Those are your creations. Like, one thing I've been doing a lot of recently And I actually, it's kind of therapeutic for me, is creating educational resources. Like, I genuinely enjoy the
Yeah, I've been
process.
hearing
Like,
that.
yeah, they like actually helps me kind of relax. And I've realized, I love making these resources. I actually have fun making them. And
Yeah.
I'm making these from scratch. This is a creative practice for me.
Creative
Like, this is, how
practice.
is this different really than making art? This is something I'm
Yeah.
writing up and I'm putting time and creativity into. I don't know. I think that it's hard to put yourself in a box. I don't even know if it's that healthy to do
Yeah.
that. So now, now
Yeah,
I'm
and also I
reframing my
think
mindset. Yeah,
and I think
sorry,
it's
go ahead.
also about no problem. It's also about understanding that our practice is not only within the studios, it's also outside. I feel like I have grown so much ever since I've started this project because I'm speaking to
Yeah,
so many artists. I'm knowing more about different cultures, about different art forms, about different practices. Also, another thing that I really preach in practice is that I love working in different dimensions and applying different learnings. Like I would work on one project which is completely different from the arts, and then I learn something from that and apply within my own practice, or what I do in my own practice I would apply it somewhere else, and it just keeps me like,
yeah,
it's challenging and it keeps me
yeah.
flowing.
It does. And I think that, like you're saying, like looking at art as well is also a really big part of your art practice, just observing other people's art, because that's what's going to inspire you. There's so many facets of a creative process. And I think as artists, we tend to think that, actually making, like doing your collage work or working on a painting, I know that for
Like,
me, I can sometimes think that's art making practice, but it's not. The creative practice is looking at art, talking about art, reflecting on art that you've made, thinking about ideas. Like, there's so many different parts to it. And we
yeah.
really have to, yeah, I'm trying to honor all of those. So I think that's important.
Perfect. Okay. Would you also like to talk about how did Visionary Art Collective come to life, and what is your vision with the project, and what really struck the chord in your heart to actually start something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Visionary Art Collective for me was born out of a true desire for community and to want to connect with others. It was coming from a place where I had felt really isolated for years. Um, as a teacher, as an artist, not really feeling like I had found my community. And so I started listening to podcasts and, about art, and I started learning. That's where it began. I was listening to these podcasts, and I was listening to a lot of really talented creative people talking about, and a lot of entrepreneurs talking about platforms that they had created or communities that they had started. And it just awakened something inside of me. Like, I was just thinking, I want to do that. I want to create a space for people. And I want to find my community. And I also just want to like connect with more people. So Visionary Art
Yeah.
Collective 1 year ago, last March, was actually just a blog that I was writing,
Uh,
in my spare time after school.
I
And I
remember
was
that.
just writing about, yeah, it was so funny. And I would message people on Instagram and be like, "Hey, can I write about you for my blog? Or can I ask you some questions from my
Uh,
blog?" And it was fun, but I noticed that as soon as I started that, I felt like I was connecting with other like-minded people, other artists and creative people for the first time in a long time. And so I started thinking about how I could even take it to the next level and, create an
mm,
actual platform. And so I that's also when I started thinking about how I could bring education into it, because I
mm,
didn't want to just create another art platform. I wanted to create something
yeah.
that was a bit like not just unique, but embodied, like embodied what's important to me. And education and teaching has
Yeah.
been a huge part of my life. I've been teaching for almost 10
Yeah.
years now. So I wanted to create a platform that celebrated the work of all the amazing teaching artists out there. And so I spent months building the website, um, thinking about what resources, what opportunities I could offer. Um, I started thinking about curators that I could work with, and now I think we just partnered up with I believe it's our fifth curator since the summer, which has been
Wow.
really incredible. And it just,
I love
it
that.
just clicked. Like as soon as it really has been magical, because as soon as I sort of put this idea, I remember writing in my journal, like Visionary Art Collective, and then I wrote the three branches, interviews, because that's what I was doing for my blog, was mostly interviews,
Yeah.
online exhibits, and then the last piece, which is one of the most important pieces, education. And I remember journaling
Yeah.
that last summer, or maybe I guess it was last spring. And then, once I started to build the website, and I really spent like 3 months building it, I started to
Yeah.
see these sort of abstract ideas materialize and like come to
Yeah.
life. And then I created the
Oh my God.
Instagram, and everything. It was like it's crazy when you have an idea for something, and it starts out very
Yeah.
abstract, but then you actually see it becoming a reality. It's a really cool feeling. And I think the best thing for me so far about the platform is just how many people, how many amazing artists and educators I've connected with,
Yeah.
and how much support I've received. Like I
Oh my
had
God.
no idea that I would receive this much support. It's been amazing. I
I
truly feel
feel you with
blessed.
everything. I feel with everything that you've been saying. I so feel I resonate with that completely. And honestly, I've seen you. Thankfully, I think we've known each other a little more than I think a year. And I
Yeah.
remember your blog was called the Insta Art Project, and I've literally,
Yes.
I've literally seen
You did
you build it
so.
from, yeah, from that to this, and it's been nothing but inspiring. And I can always feel that passion in your work, in your project, and with every resource that you put that out there, and I think a lot of people do think that when we're also talking about putting in a box, let's also talk about, like, I think we both are in that same situation. It's really not easy to be into multiple boats. As much as we love that, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And to do
No.
something, to invest our time, to invest
Oh yeah.
resources, to invest money, there's so many things that go behind um,
Oh yeah.
the making of anything that's possible that we're doing. It's so much of work that we really need that true passion and desire to do something, to go far, like to compromise on our lives, to compromise here, because that you're putting an effort into something. You may have to put a little things here and there, and it's a lot of work. And I've seen you do that, and it's really inspiring of you, of how passionately you've built this project.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's so true what you're saying. People don't see what's happening behind the scenes. Like, New Year's Eve, I was at the bank, like knocking on their door, trying to get my LLC paperwork
uh,
and trying to get my business account set up. And, it's like countless hours, in the evenings,
yeah.
early in the mornings, on my lunch break, whenever you have time. And it is a lot of money you invest in advertising and things like that. We hired an
Absolutely.
SEO team to help us with the SEO. I hired a lawyer to help with trademarking. It's so many different things. It is 100%
Yeah.
worth it. And trust me, I've had days where I'm just like so tired, but it has been, I truly think that it's actually been one of the best, if not the best things that's ever happened to me in my life
Yeah.
is this platform. Like it has been the
Um,
and how well it's been received has been
yeah.
such a blessing because you never know how people are going to respond when you put something out there,
Yeah.
but it's the
Yeah.
support has been incredible.
Love that. I love that. I agree to everything that you're saying. And I am really sure about how far this project and how far you both are going to go. I have nothing but the confidence that it's going to impact so many creative lives. And it's already, I think, you've already helped so many other artists. And the whole thought of, uplifting people in any little way that we can is just so, like,
Yeah.
so fulfilling. I mean, it's 2 a.m. for me here, and I am here talking to you because I love doing this, and I wouldn't, I mean, I would make any compromise if I have to, on my sleep, on my cycle, or anything like that, because it truly gives me joy.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And I know it's so late for you, but I completely
No.
agree. Like when you're passionate about something, when your heart is really in it,
Yeah.
you will it's that goes above everything else.
Yeah, perfect. This has been really fun, and thank you so much for being so vulnerable, sharing everything. Now comes the most exciting part of the interview, and I'm really excited. It's going to be a rapid fire. It's a fun little rapid fire. I'll ask you a fun few questions. You have to be instant and just go with whatever comes to your mind first. And just the whole idea is to give away of a little bit of more of who you are, and it's a very casual conversation. I mean, question.
Okay, I'm excited. I'm
Are you
excited.
ready?
Yes.
Let's do this. Okay, here you go. One thing you want to convey through your art.
One thing I want to convey through my art would be a sense of peace, a sense of maybe even nostalgia, that moment of being um, in peace with nature and just really kind of being in awe of the natural world.
Love that. What's one word that describes you the best?
I would say creative. I mean, I know it's it's really obvious,
No, it
but
makes sense.
I 100%
No,
creative.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I love this question. I say it in every episode. I don't know why. Okay. If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh my gosh. I would say probably in the English countryside.
Oh my God. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, like in the hills, in the hills.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would say probably there.
I'm sure that's happening. And once you do that, please call me.
Yes. Oh, and also in Paris would be amazing.
Oh,
Just
wow.
throwing that out there.
Oh, I think then we could be neighbors because, that's something I also want to have.
Oh my gosh, what a
Perfect.
dream.
Yeah, we were making that true for sure.
Oh yeah, that needs to happen.
Yeah. Your biggest source of inspiration.
My biggest source of inspiration, honestly, the artwork that I look at, the artwork that I see. Like when I go to a museum, a gallery, even just on Instagram, the artwork that other people are making is so mind blowing to me that it inspires me to get back in the studio.
Yeah, makes oh wonderful. Okay, what was your age when you first visited a museum?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. Probably really young. I used to go with my parents. I mean, I don't actually have a memory of the first time. So I imagine that I was a child, probably under 10 years old, but uh
Wow.
I don't remember. I don't remember the exact place.
Love. That's okay. I think, this is the first time I'm asking these questions because I realized that sometimes, honestly, I was quite hesitant for a very long time to even accept the fact that I hadn't been to a museum until like my teenage. And
Mhm.
like a museum, because the kind of museums we had here, um I mean, I don't know, maybe my own definition. And I was quite uncomfortable with accepting that fact, but the more I became open about it, I realized that I wasn't alone. And via this podcast, I also want to make sure that we convey the message that artists come in all shapes,
Yes.
sizes, backgrounds,
Oh,
ethnicities,
yeah.
experiences. And just knowing
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you could see your first museum visit in when you're 50, 5, 10, or
Oh,
15.
yeah.
It doesn't have to do
Exactly.
anything.
Yes, I
Perfect.
think that's a really good message to send.
Perfect. Next question. Who's your favorite woman artist?
Jenny Savelle. She's
Perfect. I'm
amazing.
going to leave
I
her.
don't have you seen her work before?
No, I'm going to look it up and add it to the show notes.
Yeah, she is so I was lucky enough to actually see her work when I was 16 in person, and
Okay.
my dream is to see her work again. It is absolutely incredible.
Awesome. I'm sure that will happen soon again. Okay.
So
Next question. Who is your who is your go-to person when it comes to when who is your go-to person when you need advice or you're in trouble?
I mean, I go to my boyfriend for a lot of things. He gives me really good advice, and he's just really helpful. But I also talk to my parents a lot. I have a very open
Wow.
relationship with them. Yeah, I'm super close with them, so I talk to them all the time. And I would say between my boyfriend and my parents, yeah,
Uh, I think that's a great combination. Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. So this question could be a little more than a word. So, okay, I'm just giving you a go ahead. Can you pinpoint one moment? I'm sure there have been many, but one moment in your career and your life as an artist where you felt like, oh my God, I just feel so grateful to be an artist. Just one experience that you would like to share with us.
Sure. So a moment where I felt like truly grateful for being an
Yeah.
artist. You know, I would have to say last year in COVID, when the pandemic hit, being able to go to my studio when everything was so stressful,
Yeah.
being able to go to my studio and just work on my art was really a blessing. And I had so many moments of gratitude during that time.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% feel that. Lovely. Okay. If you were to meet younger Victoria today, what advice would you give her?
I would really encourage her to the younger me is a very different version than what you know now. Very, very
I'm sure.
different. So there's a
I'm
lot
sure.
of things. There's a lot of things I would say to her. But I would I like don't even know where to begin. Oh my gosh. Younger Victoria was a bit of a hot mess, let's put it that way. But I would say I wish I had a little bit more self-love, to be honest. I was a little wild through my teen years, and I think it came from a place of I think, when I really dig into it now as an adult, I think that the many years I felt as a child after moving to this country, feeling a bit like an outsider, never really feeling like I fit in. I think those feelings I buried down, and I think they came out later when I was a teenager because I was partying a lot, I was going out a lot, and it wasn't always coming from a place of just wanting to have fun. I think part of it was coming from a place slightly of wanting to escape a little bit. And I would tell
Yeah.
myself to just calm down a bit and just take it easy, and I would just encourage myself to practice a bit more self-love and self-acceptance, because I think if we don't
Yeah.
do that, it can manifest itself in not so healthy ways.
Yeah, that's really true. And that's a wonderful thing to share. Thank you for sharing that. One last question of this rapid fire. Shout out to one or many artists who are currently on your heart list slash you're loving. Anyone.
Sure. I have to give a big shout out to Katerina Popova. She has
Absolutely.
been just, yes, I mean, she's incredible, especially with creating the Art Queens community.
Yeah.
She was also a personal mentor and coach to me while I
Yeah.
was starting Visionary Art Collective. And she was there with me through the very beginning of starting this platform and continues to really be there if I ever need help or have a question or advice. And
Yeah.
so she has been a really, really important figure in my life. And I would
I
have
so
to give a
love that.
huge shout out and thank you to her for sure.
Same here. Love that. I think that is something that I think we had a lot of commonalities in this conversation,
Yeah,
and I would 100% agree to that because Kat's been such a major influence for myself as well, and she's having the support has really made a lot of difference to what I'm doing right now. It's been a
yeah,
beautiful journey.
yeah.
Perfect.
It's been
Victoria,
amazing.
this has been amazing. I had such a blast. I can't even tell you. Honestly, I could go on. I could go on for hours right now. But I
Me
know
too.
I will have to get you again sometime again soon so that we can talk more. But
Yeah.
before I let you go, I also want to ask you, where is your heart taking you right now? And are you working on something new that you would like to share with us? Any new project, anything that with Visionary? And last but not the least, that where can we follow you and your projects?
Sure. So I'm working on a few things for my artistic self and also for Visionary. I'm going to be starting a new painting series in the coming months, which I spent yesterday just planning out, and I'm really excited about. Um, and then with Visionary, I'm just continuing to connect with different curators, and um, we're going to have more online exhibits this year. We also have some fun things planned for the fall that I can't quite reveal yet. But we will be branching out even further, and I'm
Awesome.
really, really excited for what's to come.
Yeah,
Oh, and in terms of
love that. But
following, so, oh, sorry, go
when you
ahead.
do that, no problem. So, but when you do that, please let me know so that we can share with the audience and they're updated with everything that you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely will. And in terms of where to follow me, Visionary Art Collective, and then my personal Instagram for my art is Victoria J Fry.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Victoria. This has been amazing. Thank you for taking out the time and thank you for agreeing to come here. I am sure people would love this as much as I did. And I hope, please keep sending us whatever you're doing anyway that we can support you. And I'm definitely rooting for you and for Visionary Art Collective for sure. And I can't wait to see all the amazing things that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so grateful to have connected with you today, and I truly felt like I was chatting to an old friend
Same.
this whole time. We will definitely have to do it again, and
Absolutely.
I can't wait to continue following your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.